I paid off Theodore Gray's debts and invested a large sum of money to help him make a comeback finally. I got engaged to him as I wished. However, he still abandoned me during the fire. He carried his childhood sweetheart, who had once deserted him, to safety and never looked back even once. And in the excruciating pain of my skin being burned, the system's voice rang in my ear. The mission has failed. You have one last chance. Do you want to change the target of your pursuit? Standing at the alley where I had saved Theodore Gray in my previous life, I firmly refused. No need. Change the target of my pursuit? Impossible. I had endured so much suffering, and in this life, he deserved to experience it too. The day Theodore Gray's childhood sweetheart, Isabella Layton, invited me to meet, a fire broke out in the building. When my leg was pinned under the pillar, the flames seared my skin painfully. Isabella Layton and I were wrapped in the room by the fire. My fiancé Theodore Gray was on his way after receiving my call. As the fire grew fiercer, my heart sank gradually. Until Isabella Layton's voice and Theodore Gray's footsteps sounded simultaneously. "Ion, you came to save me. It hurt so much. I just sprained my ankle." Theodore Gray didn't hesitate when he picked her up. I still heard him shout in my direction. "You always Thorn?" After all, it was me who made the distress call. I only managed a weak response before losing the strength to answer. All I heard was Isabella Layton's scream. "Hurry up! It's going to be too late." "Ion, Eloise Thorne can run on her own. Ion, let's go quickly." "I don't want to die." Isabella Layton's voice carried a hint of anxious sobbing. I knew that Theodore Gray had always been unable to refuse his childhood sweetheart, who he had once held dear in his heart. Even for our wedding, he had to keep it a secret from her. And I returned to the moment when I first entered this world. The system's electronic voice sounded again. "You want to change the target of your pursuit?" I stood firmly at the alley where I had saved Theodore Gray in my previous life and firmly refused. No need. Theodore Gray was curled up among the rotting garbage, and blood trickled down from his head. He didn't see me and let out a faint groan from his mouth. Maybe changing the target would be better then. The system's voice stopped abruptly as I stepped on Theodore Gray's finger. I pressed down hard. Theodore Gray raised his head, and the blood on his face covered his eyes. He couldn't see my face clearly. I squatted down, my fingertips caressing his face, and said in a voice even softer than in my previous life, "Don't be afraid. I'm here to save you. Theodore Gray." And my identity was someone who had known Theodore Gray since childhood in his former circle, but there was no love between us. There was only a sense of responsibility. The irony was that in the end, I was still abandoned by him and died a tragic death. When he saw me sitting by the bedside looking at her, "Eloise Thorne?" I met his eyes and suddenly burst into tears, throwing myself into his arms. "I'll pay back the medical expenses. I'm short of money at the moment." "I'm not short of money," I interrupted him. Just then, Theodore Gray's phone suddenly vibrated, and a note popped up on the cracked screen. "Isabella Layton. Don't you want to complete the mission and go home?" "Yes, I do." "Of course I do. Calm down and listen to me. It's better for us to change the target of our pursuit, you see." "No." I interrupted it. Theodore Gray had his pride, and he still carried his childhood sweetheart in his ear that definitely wouldn't agree at this moment. I was so stupid in my previous life that I did everything for him, but never took credit in front of him. I made him think that there was truly selfless dedication in this world. But he should know that everything in this world comes at a price. This is the first lesson I want to teach him after being reborn. The day Theodore Gray was discharged from the hospital, his leg still hadn't fully recovered, and he was in a wheelchair. I asked the driver to take him back to school. The car window was rolled down halfway, and I stood at the door waving as I watched Theodore Gray leave. The system asked in my mind, "You're just letting him go?" "Of course," I said, "because he'll be back soon." The system asked again, but I didn't answer. Theodore Gray opened his mouth and then closed eye. The gaze swept around in the classroom. When a boy carrying food passed by, he tripped the boy, and most of the soup in the boy's hand spilled out. Theodore Gray was stunned for a moment before saying, "Sorry," but the boy who was bumped seemed to suddenly flare up in anger. He threw the food tray at Theodore Gray, staining his clean shirt. "Are you fucking blind?" The canteen fell silent immediately, and countless eyes turned towards them. I didn't move and slowly finished the meal in front of me. The other person cursed Theodore Gray several times with harsh words. Before swaggering away, Theodore Gray, with food all over his head, lowered his eyes and wanted to leave. But the wheels of the wheelchair were stuck by something. He couldn't deal with it, and in full view of everyone, he had to call Isabella Layton for help. I watched as he dialed the number several times before it was finally answered. In the crowded crowd, I quietly moved closer and heard him ask, "Isabella Layton, can you come and help me?" The other side replied impatiently, "No." Then the call was hung up. Theodore Gray was in the center of the crowd, but people around him avoided him, creating a lonely circle. I put the food tray into the recycling bin and then leisurely called Theodore Gray. It took a long time for the call to be answered. "Are they here again?" I didn't get an answer to my series of questions. In the end, I only heard Theodore Gray's voice, which was so soft that it trembled. "Eloise Thorne." It was like a reluctant show of weakness. "Can you come to me now?" "Okay," I answered without hesitation. The midday sun was so dazzling that it made people dizzy. I lowered my eyes and smiled. Theodore Gray was like a crane stuck in the mud, and willing to bow his head. In this life, I'm going to break his pride, and only then will he know that everything has a price. I took Theodore Gray to my home. After the private doctor examined Theodore Gray's body, he reminded him to supplement his nutrition. "Your leg will recover faster that way." They took the burn ointment from the doctor's hand and applied it to Theodore Gray's forehead. Theodore Gray lowered his eyes and obediently let me touch him. After putting away the ointment, I sat by his bedside without leaving, my fingers touching the strands of hair on his cheek. Theodore Gray instinctively leaned back a little. "Theodore Gray, do you want to think again about my proposal?" Before Theodore Gray could speak, I continued, "You don't have to think too highly of me. Just consider it a deal. I'll pay you to be at my beck and call for 3 years. The last ray of the sunset glowed on his face, making him look somewhat desolate for no reason. I waited quietly. Even the system tried to persuade me. "Host, don't push into hard." Then Theodore Gray suddenly said, "Okay." In front of Theodore Gray, I paid off all his debts the next day. When I got up early and pushed Theodore Gray to school, at the classroom door, we happened to run into Isabella Layton. In fact, in my previous life, I didn't see her very often, ignoring me. She said to Theodore Gray, "Are you okay?" Theodore Gray looked up at me and shook his head. "Eloise Thorne." I looked up and happened to meet Isabella Layton's beautiful eyes and brows. She had a smile on her face as if she had never had an argument with me at all. I took a step back, and she stepped forward and leaned closer to me. "Do you like Theodore Gray?" "Well, he's good-looking. There were any people who liked him before." He never agreed to anyone." "Do you know why?" I asked the salesperson to wrap up 2 bracelets and smiled at her. "There's no need to show off to me. You don't like him now, do you?" "What are you afraid of?" "Isabella Layton." They took a step forward. "Are you afraid that he will fall in love with me?" "Don't think too much." Isabella Layton shrugged indifferently. "And just reminding you not to place the wrong bet. Theodore Gray's parents are not good at managing their business, and he may not be either. Don't bother yourself with this." Isabella Layton walked away with brisk steps. The system complained in my head. I wonder if she can still laugh when she sees the male lead achieve success and fame in the future. Of course she can, I said, because she doesn't care at all. As long as she's willing to turn back, Theodore Gray will always be there for her. It was like that in my previous life. In this life, it may not be the case, thanks to me. Theodore Gray's college life was very peaceful. His leg injury healed quickly, and it was back to normal in less than 3 months. He had a strong determination in his heart and was busy with his studies while trying to find ways to start a business. I knew he was in a hurry, but I didn't offer to fund his startup capital as I did in my previous life. His system asked me, "What's the next step?" Cultivate our relationship slowly. The turning point in my relationship with Theodore Gray came in the 5th month after we were together. It was his birthday that day unusually. He came home early. He was sitting on the sofa in the living room, reading a book and occasionally checking his phone, until I came back in the evening. I took his hand excitedly and said, "You're home so early today. Let's go to a private restaurant I booked for dinner." I booked it several months ago. Theodore Gray was stunned for a moment and was pulled out of the house by me. The restaurant was located on the halfway up the mountain. By the time we drove there, it was almost nightfall. I served Theodore Gray a lot of food. He ate, occasionally looking at the phone on the table. But there was no movement. After dinner, I pulled him out for a walk. The path behind the courtyard led straight to the top of the mountain, and I took his hand. The mountain path was a bit rough, and I stumbled over a stone. Theodore Gray quickly caught my waist. "I'll carry you." I shook my head and leaned in to kiss him. Theodore Gray was so startled that he almost jumped away, and his ears turned right. The top of the mountain was very quiet. So quiet that all we could hear was the rustling of the wind through the leaves. A time on the phone ticked to 10 o'clock at night. Theodore Gray and I sat down on the bench. The phone in his pocket vibrated, and he quickly took it out. He only saw a piece of spam information. I saw the disappointment on his face. Immediately, he opened the phone dialog box and stopped at the Isabella Layton column. But there was still no movement. In half an hour, it would be Isabella Layton's. That time, Theodore Gray didn't say a word, and I just sat there quietly beside him. I knew what he was waiting for. Time passed minute by minute. When there were only 15 minutes left, he suddenly turned off his phone. "Lois Thorne, are you cold?" He gave up. I shook my head. "Theodore Gray, stop waiting." He was taken aback. I said, "It's just a simple happy birthday." "I can say it too. I booked this private restaurant a long time ago, thinking you would like the food here. I think you've been really tired recently. So I also made an appointment with a nutritionist and a masseur for you. The pre-ordered fireworks suddenly shot into the sky, interrupting what I was about to say. Among the blooming fireworks, 6 Chinese characters appeared. "Happy birthday, Theodore Gray." It was a bit hasty. It felt a bit tacky. I frowned and turned to look at Theodore Gray. Fireworks were reflected in his eyes, making his eyes and brows look even more beautiful. "Theodore Gray." I shouted his name loudly. He turned to look at me, leaned in, and his eyes were filled with a brilliance that dispelled a lot of the gloom. I leaned close to his ear. What could be more terrifying than not receiving a birthday wish? Of course, there was something. For example, the grand birthday parties. He used to have the never-ending stream of birthday wishes and gifts. But now there was only me. I said, "I will remember, even if no one else remembers. I will remember. Theodore Gray, happy birthday." Theodore Gray finally smiled. In the deafening sound of the fireworks, my lips brushed against his cheek. He looked at me, and in his eyes filled with fireworks, there was also a small reflection of me. The next second he kissed me. The system let out a piercing mechanical sound in my head. After witnessing Theodore Gray make me a cup of milk, after finishing his work again, the system said, "I think you're making much faster progress this time than last time. After a few more years like this, it should work out, right?" I took a few sips of milk on the sofa. Have you forgotten? It's because Isabella Layton hasn't shown up. The system hesitated a bit. I don't think that's the case, right? I smiled. I calculated the time. It was almost time for Isabella Layton's grandmother to get set. In my previous life, she came to bed. Theodore Gray shed a few tears and made Theodore Gray feel so sorry for her. He even stooped to beg me. I agreed to Theodore Gray's request and then made a rather difficult request. I asked Theodore Gray to have no more contact with Isabella Layton in the future. Theodore Gray's gaze on me was a bit cold, but it returned to its gentle look in an instant. He said, "Okay." He kept his word. He stopped having any contact with her. He didn't stop caring about her. Later, Theodore Gray helped Isabella Layton resolve countless crises. He will still come to me. The day Isabella Layton sought him out, Theodore Gray didn't come home at night for the first time. I sent him a message asking where he was. He said there was something urgent at the company and he had to work overtime and told me to go to bed early. So I turned off my phone and fell asleep immediately. Theodore Gray came back in the early morning, looking tired with obvious wrinkles on his shirt. I turned over in bed, and Theodore Gray pulled me into his arms without saying a word. There was a strange and quiet atmosphere in the air. "Is she your friend?" Theodore Gray was stunned for a moment before saying, "Yes," I said. "Your friend is my friend too. I'll help you find a solution." I wasn't lying to him either. People live for many things in their lives. So I want to discover it myself before he tells me personally. A week after the operation, Theodore Gray visited his grandmother from time to time. I bought some fruits and followed him there. The door of the hospital room wasn't fully closed, and I stood at the door looking inside. Theodore Gray peeled an apple for his grandmother, and she thanked him with a smile. "I really owe it all to you. I hope Grandma gets better soon." Theodore Gray put the fruit knife aside and got up to leave. "I still have." Isabella Layton suddenly threw herself at him and hugged him tightly, her eyes brimming with tears. Theodore Gray's body stiffened for an instant, and he instinctively reached out to push her away. Isabella Layton held on to him, without letting go. "It's all thanks to you that Grandma is getting better." She was crying so hard that Theodore Gray was a bit at a loss. He patted her back. It's okay. Grandma will get better." Isabella Layton looked at him with tearful eyes. "Let me treat you to dinner tonight." "No." When Theodore Gray left home this morning, he said he would go out to eat with me. "Isabel," the Layton's voice was soft. "We haven't had a meal together for a long time." I watched as Theodore Gray's expression became hesitant, and it took him a long time to speak. "Okay." Before his voice faded, I suddenly opened the door of the hospital room. Theodore Gray, who was being hugged by Isabella Layton, suddenly turned pale and broke free from her arms. "Alois Thorne." I put down the fruits and called Grandma with a smile. "Theodore Gray said you're recovering well. I've been so busy that I just got the chance to come and see you." Grandma looked at Theodore Gray with some confusion. Theodore Gray said, "This is the friend who introduced the doctor to you." "Friend?" I sneered inwardly. I didn't stay long and left. As I was going downstairs, I heard Theodore Gray chasing after me and shouting, "Alois Thorne! Alois Thorne!" I ignored him and kept walking. There were a lot of people in the corridor. Theodore Gray tripped over someone and then bumped into others, drawing a series of curses along the way. They turned a deaf ear and kept walking. Theodore Gray finally grabbed my hand and pulled me into his arms. "I was wrong. Alois Thorne. Don't be angry with me. I didn't mean not to tell you it was Isabella Layton. You were afraid I'd be angry, and you were afraid I wouldn't help you because of Isabella Layton. So you didn't tell me, and you distanced yourself from me in front of her grandmother." Theodore Gray, is my sincerity really worthless? Do you also think I'm so stupid, right? No, you're not stupid, you. Ray, not stupid. Theodore Gray hugged me, and his voice was trembling. "Lois Thorne is the smartest person in the world. It's my fault, it's all my fault," I said. "No, then, let me choose for you." There was no impatience in his tone at all. Instead, he seemed eager to try. Last time when I was on a business trip and said no, he bought back all the things he had taken a fancy to. The necklaces could cover my entire neck. I sighed. "Just buy one thing." The person on the other end obediently replied, "Okay." I thought for a while and then said, "I'm not angry with you anymore." Theodore Gray took a deep breath. "I'll book a flight for tomorrow and come back to see you right away." I was amused by him. "What about your work?" "It's not as important as you." I pursed my lips and smiled. When I hung up the phone, the moonlight fell at my feet. I remembered when I was sick in my previous life. Theodore Gray had to go on a business trip abroad. I had a fever in bed, curled up with the quilt, feeling listless. When Theodore Gray left, he called me Lois Thorne. "I'm going out," I responded. In fact, being as observant as he was, he couldn't have failed to notice the hoarseness in my voice. I didn't ask him to stay. He just played the role of a wife who compromised and endured everything. Just like the strategy given by the system, not delaying any of his work. It's actually quite obvious whether there is love or not. The strategy given by the system is really stupid. The mechanical voice in my head complained dissatisfied lie. That's what other pursuers do. Then, I wished them success. Bringing my thoughts back, this time, the system's prompt came after a few seconds of hesitation. "Host, I think we've got this in the bag." He deleted his childhood sweetheart in the previous life. He always kept her contact. "There's still a little more to go," I said. "What's missing?" "What's missing is the last choice in the previous life. But, in this life, it doesn't matter who he chooses." I accompanied Theodore Gray to a dinner party, and he picked out the evening dress for me. When we arrived, several people looked at me with amazement in their eyes. Theodore Gray had to talk business with others, so I walked around the banquet hall with a glass of wine in my hand. There were fewer people on the second floor, and I stood on the balcony looking at the lake below. When we came in, the security guard reminded us that the lake was very deep and not to get too close. After waiting for a while, the person I had an appointment with finally arrived. Isabella Layton's eyes and brows revealed a weariness that even cosmetics couldn't hide. "Do you want to show off to me?" Theodore Gray deleted me. "Do you think you've succeeded?" I said, "I don't think so. I used to think that if I fought for it, maybe Theodore Gray would love me later. I realized that there are quite a lot of girls who have this thought, because he has a good personality. Gentle and kind." Later, I realized that no matter how much I fought, there was only one person in his heart. "Isabella Layton, I actually envy you no matter what you do. He will always be there for you." I smiled at her. "Can you gamble with me one last time? His career is on the rise now, and it won't be long before he makes a comeback. If you win, I'll leave on my own and preserve your reputation." Isabella Layton looked at me coldly, as if trying to figure out how much truth there was in my words. "Are you really willing?" I smiled. "His heart isn't with me, and I can't keep him." She raised her eyebrows and agreed readily, because she knew it would definitely be her. A few minutes later, the sound of someone falling into the water spread throughout the entire hall. It floated up and down in the bottomless lake water and was choked by several mouthfuls of water. More and more people gathered by the lake. I saw Theodore Gray running and jumping into the water without hesitation. The water was very cold on that late autumn night. I was choked by several mouthfuls of water and watched as the figure swimming closer and closer to me stopped halfway. He lifted another slender figure and swam towards the shore. Just like that day in the fire, he carried Isabella Layton to safety and never looked back. "Here's another one. It's about to sink." The belated security guards jumped into the water, grabbed my waist, and pulled me towards the shore. Isabella Layton curled up in Theodore Gray's arms, wrapped in his coat. The moment I got ashore, Theodore Gray let go of his hand and strode towards me. Aloy Thorne. I didn't know. The waiter draped a blanket over me. The beautiful dress he had picked out for me in the afternoon was now covered with water plants. It was as if a fire had been ignited from my fingertips. I didn't cry. I didn't question him. I just slowly pulled my hand out of his, and Theodore Gray wouldn't let go. I pried his fingers off one by one. I said, "I don't want you anymore. Theodore Gray, I don't want you anymore." Just like those relatives who stammered and kept their distance when his family went bankrupt in Isabella Layton. 'Cause then I became cold and didn't want to talk to him much. He understood all of that. Isabella Layton occasionally asked him about his recent situation on WeChat, just to make sure he wasn't dead, and never said much more. Theodore Gray knew that it was actually her parents' instruction. Even a little bit of kindness in difficult times was considered rare. Theodore Gray remembered her kindness and also understood her. A little bit of throbbing from his youth had been worn away by reality. Only Aloy Thorne was an exception. She was like a fire that suddenly ignited in the coldest of winters. It burned so hot that it almost scorched him. It made him vaguely think it was an illusion caused by the cold. Previously, they didn't see each other often. When he saw her again during his difficult times, she opened her mouth and asked him to be her boyfriend. It was like she was deliberately teasing him. Theodore Gray didn't want to. She didn't force him. Later, when everyone else looked down on him, she was the only one who came for him later. When she brought it up again, Theodore Gray thought that even if it was teasing, it didn't matter. Theodore Gray didn't understand at that time. When would he be able to tell everyone openly that they were a couple? So high did he have to climb to be truly worthy of her? Theodore Gray didn't know. All he knew was that he had to climb up as hard as he could. The day Theodore Gray came was an ordinary morning. I was lying in bed watching an anime, and the system kept screaming in my head, "Where's the male lead? Where's Theodore Gray? This is the last chance already." I scratched my arm. Give him some time. It's already been a long time. The system was in a panic. I ignored it. Yawned, climbed onto Theodore Gray's hospital bed, and pushed him aside. The system was worried. "Host, what if you really kill the male lead later? He deserves it," I replied. I woke up. I was held tightly in someone's arms as soon as I opened my eyes. I met Theodore Gray's dark eyes. He seemed a bit happy, but his lips drooped down again before they could curve into a smile. "Aloy Thorne." He leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Don't be angry with me anymore, okay?" I looked at him and said calmly, "Aren't you really afraid of death?" I met Theodore Gray's eyes. There were arc circles under his eyes, as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. I could still vaguely see the gentle shadow of the past. I said, "Maybe." Then I punched Theodore Gray in the stomach. Theodore Gray's grip loosened slightly, and I struggled free and landed on the ground. "I'm not angry with you." "I just don't like you anymore," I said. "I made an appointment with a guy I like to watch a ball game today. I'm leaving now." Theodore Gray was taken aback. I didn't respond to him. He pulled out the IV needle from his hand, didn't even put on his shoes, and came to pull me. Stopped the nurse at the door. He just pulled out the IV needle himself. The cut on Theodore Gray's hand was still bleeding, and two nurses stopped him. I deftly made my way through the crowd. Aloy Thorne. Aloy Thorne. "Don't go." Theodore Gray shouted my name like he was crazy, but I didn't look back. The system asked me, "When did you make an appointment with someone to watch a ball game?" I lied to him. "I only have one thing on my mind, which is going home. I don't have the mood to find someone else." The system fell silent. He took a look at me and held my hand. Theodore Gray changed his shoes and sat on the sofa. I took out some medicine from the cabinet and threw it to him. He stared at me intently. I smiled mockingly. Are you still waiting for me to wipe it for you? Theodore Gray lowered his eyes and opened the medicine himself. The quiet atmosphere was broken by his words. You yesterday. What about it? Theodore Gray asked with difficulty. I thought for a while, frowned, then said, I was rejected. Or I didn't expect him to have a girlfriend, and she's the captain of the school cheerleading team. I made it up on the spot. Theodore Gray listened, and his expression twisted a bit. It was as if he wanted to be happy, but was also afraid I'd be sad. So he tried his best to hold it back. I asked him, Are you happy? Theodore Gray shook his head. Eloise Thorne. He angry with me. Hit me or scold me, whatever. That day, it was too dark, and I didn't see it was you clearly. But it's still my fault. You can blame me however you want. Without a word, I slapped him across the face. The corner of Theodore Gray's eye turned red, and the contrast with his pale skin was even more striking. There was a kind of cruel beauty. My hand turned red from the slap. Theodore Gray lowered his eyes and held my hand, rubbing it gently. He even asked me, Does it hurt? The system screamed again. Host, don't you still want to go back? Of course. But before I go back, I want to get some interest from the previous life first. I've changed my mind. I let go of Theodore Gray's hand, tilted his chin, then took a look. Theodore Gray was being obedient. I said, I found that your profile is a bit like that guy's, but he doesn't like to dress in this business style, and lowered my eyes and smiled. Do you still want to be with me? Theodore Gray. He answered without hesitation, yes. The next day, I flew back with Theodore Gray. The butler almost shed tears when he saw me, saying that I had lost weight again. I changed Theodore Gray's suit into a casual outfit. He looked a bit like a college student. I ordered him to put away the things, closed the door, and locked him outside. Theodore Gray and I started dating again. There was no agreement, and he indulged me. I'm not short of money, so he tries every means to make me happy. The things that can't be solved with money are the difficult ones besides dealing with company affairs every day. Theodore Gray's mind is filled with how to make me happy. I like to ask him to do things that the other guy would do. I said he loves playing basketball. So Theodore Gray went to learn. He said he doesn't like eating watermelon, so Theodore Gray never touched it again. I said he has the fragrance of orange blossoms on him. So Theodore Gray sprayed perfume on himself every day despite the risk of an allergic reaction. As long as he did what I asked, I would hug him and say, I like you the most. 2 months after we came back, I met Isabella Layton in the mall. She looked at me. Then there was a hint of calmness in her eyes and brows. You said you would take the initiative to withdraw. I did withdraw. I smiled, and then Theodore Gray begged me to come back. Isabella Layton's chest heaved for a while, and her voice became less calm. I really regret it. Regret what? Regret agreeing to your bet at that time. Regret letting Theodore Gray have contact with you. Regret not having, she said, stopped torturing him. Eloise Thorne. I don't love him, and I know you don't either. Don't torture him anymore. Eloise Thorne. I smiled at her. Our eyes met briefly in the air. Isabella Layton doesn't love him. I've always known that. She treated him like a stepping stone, like a cushion when she fell, like a scepter to show off her status. You're the last person who has the right to say this, but I promise you. But I got home in the evening. Theodore Gray brought me a gift. A limited edition rabbit doll newly released by a foreign toy factory. I hugged him and kissed him. Theodore Gray lowered his head and kissed my forehead. Then he put on an apron and went to the kitchen to cook. I sneaked up behind him and watched him cutting vegetables. Theodore Gray said, The kitchen has a lot of oil fumes. Eloise Thorne, you better go out first. I didn't want to eat the food cooked by the aunt, so I asked Theodore Gray to learn how to cook. After he learned it, the kitchen became his territory. When I told my friends about it, they were envious and said I had a good eye and found someone who is both capable and good to me. I just smiled. Theodore Gray. I stood on tiptoe. I hugged him from behind. I'll tell you a secret. What is it? The system tried to stop me in my head. Host, maybe you'd better not say it. I'm afraid you'll turn against each other directly after you say it. I ignored it and leaned close to his ear. I don't have a guy I like. The knife for cutting vegetables fell into the sink. Theodore Gray's hand was cut with a bloody mark. He was stunned for a long time before turning around and hugging me into his arms. Eloise Thorne, you lied to me. He seemed possessed, laughing and crying as his kisses landed on my forehead. Eloise Thorne. I echoed his name with each call. Yes, when he whispered it again, I looped my arms around his neck. I love you, Theodore Gray. Those words were the biggest lie of all. He stiffened. I nudged him. Get up, let me bandage your wound. He obeyed in a daze, sitting still as I cleaned and draped the cut suddenly. He stumbled upstairs. I heard things crashing, then watched him reappear with the velvet box. He dropped to one knee without hesitation. Eloise Thorne, marry me. The diamond ring inside sparkled blindingly. I squinted, amused. Aren't you rushing things? He sighed. I'd rather this lie last. I held out my hand and put it on. His fingers fumbled as he slid the ring on. Suits you, I remarked. I measured your finger every night. People around us whispered about the whirlwind engagement. Mr. Gray seems desperate to tie the knot. I twirled the tassel on my bag. It's not sudden. I can't wait. The system protested. Isn't this too fast? Not fast enough. I want to go home. That silenced it. Theodore threw himself into wedding preparations. The event dwarfed their last one. He argued with planners on the balcony. I spooned yogurt and grilled the system. Do I leave right after the wedding? After exchanging rings? It hesitated. Technically, after your physical body dies. Then I asked the efficient to stab me. Or we could wait for the chandelier to fall? The system groaned. Why so violent? Death isn't pretty. It finally pleaded. Stay, he loves you. And your life here is perfect. I watched Theodore return, his eyes lighting up. Not hungry. I'm saving room for the wedding dress. You louch in any dress, he said. Once he disappeared into the kitchen, I murmured. No chance. Wedding day. I floated through the motions. Theodore. Texts buzzed my phone as I sat through hair and makeup. On the aisle, the spotlight seared. He abandoned protocol to lift my train, earning wolf whistles. Under the crystal chandelier, his gaze pinned me. In place his eyes held nothing but my reflection. The efficient's words blurred until, do you promise to love, perish, then remain faithful? I recalled Isabella's plea. Stop hurting him. To the system I snapped. I'm the one who endured his cold shoulders, his excuses. His choice she got his redemption while I burned, drowned, and died. The system's silence said it all. A final sigh echoed before white light consumed me. I woke to the scent of cat fur. Miga, my white-eyed cat, purred on my pillow. Reality. Its warmth seeped into my bones. After Eloise's death, Theodore's world rewound to age 18 kneeling in her funeral hall. He stared at her, smile. Mallow, just like in her wedding's final seconds. Her parents, icy glares promised retribution, but he barely registered the threat. The memories of Eloise's reeled as resurfaced, a fever-racked teenager begging for her parents, only to be dismissed. The day she met him, a spark returned to her eyes. He chased that spark ever since, ignoring the differences between his memory and the woman he'd fallen for. At her grave, he traced the air above her face. I know you're out there. Illness dragged him under when he woke. Isabella hovered nearby. Let's do, she said. He turned away. Leave me. As his empire crumbled under her father's attacks, Theodore haunted the city. He glimpsed Soleils everywhere. In supermarkets, on sidewalks, playing with a cat named Miga. That white, mismatched-eyed feline mirrored her mischief. People called him mad, but he followed her shadows. desperate for a touch. When a car careened toward her phantom, he lunged without thinking. Pain shattered his bones, but his last sight was her retreating figure, slipping beyond reach.